Coming up on the Civil Discourse, part 2 of a roundtable discussion with 2 police commissioners. Commissioners Danielle Outlaw and Charles H. Ramsey discuss their experiences in Philadelphia and other major U.S. cities. They address national concerns about gun violence, community policing practices, and the call for police reform.
But the focus and the emphasis in policing today is really about building those relationships. It's about teaching, treating people respectfully. It's about de-escalating situations as opposed to, taking immediate action and simply escalating things.
Hello and welcome to the Civil Discourse. I'm your host, Paula Marantz Cohen, Dean of the Pennoni Honors College at Drexel University, speaking to you from my office at Bentley Hall in Philadelphia. Today is part 2 of a roundtable discussion with 2 police commissioners. My guests are individuals with extensive experience in the area of law enforcement. Charles Ramsey is a former police chief of Washington, D.C., and a retired police commissioner of Philadelphia. Danielle Outlaw is a former police commissioner of Portland, Oregon, and the current police commissioner of Philadelphia. Welcome back to the Civil Discourse, Commissioners Ramsey and Outlaw.
Thank you.
The whole idea of systemic racism, do you feel that the police force is systemically problematic?
We are part of a larger criminal justice system. We are the entryway, we're the front doors, right? The gates into the criminal justice system, but we're but one part. And so I think by, generalizing and painting this broad stroke and saying, well, because you're part of this larger system, all of law enforcement is broken it's a mistake. It's definitely a mistake because we're needed. We know we're needed. Look at what's happening with the crime rate, the violent crime, the non-fatal shootings and the homicides growing up. And the first thing people say is, where are the police? What are you doing? Well, which is it? Do you want more police?
But do you think the police are being recruited properly? Do you think the right people are in the force, as well as are they trained properly?
It's a difference between adjusting and making tweaks within the system of law enforcement, as opposed to saying the entire system of law enforcement is bad. Are we recruiting? Are we reflecting the values that we say? Are we really acting out who we say we are? Are we still showing videos and commercials and recruiting tools showing people rappelling down the side of buildings, hopping out of helicopters? And, or is that really who we are? Or are we showing the community, the people that we want to recruit, that, we got single moms here. We got people with second and third careers here, people with lived experience. You might have been a social worker. You might have, those are things that we can little things that we can tweak, right? And implement oversight. And again, accountability, those are fixable. That's what I'm responsible for. But to throw the entire profession of law enforcement out or police out and say, well, we don't want any of you because of these things here and there need to be tweaked is a terrible thing to do.
Okay. Do you want to add to that, Commissioner?
I tell you, that's pretty powerful. And there's not a whole lot to add other than just to say that, when I talk to people about this whole defund issue, which I am not obviously a proponent of, I hear different things. But what I hear more often is that, there ought to be more mental health workers, homeless outreach. I don't disagree with that. I haven't talked to any police chiefs that disagree with that. But we have to remember the reason police have a lot of these responsibilities is because cities have underfunded these agencies for years. And it's going to take time to staff them up to a level where they can actually respond to calls with someone going through a mental health crisis, deal with the volume of people in need of housing, substance abuse counselors and so forth. It's not going to happen overnight. So you need long-term and short-term strategies.
Yeah. Can I ask you, though, I'm speaking, I guess, personally a little bit. It always has seemed to me that the police are very severe in their attitude. But the idea of being warm, of being, again, this gets back to community and so forth. That's not part of the training, is it? Or has not traditionally been that a policeman should be, a friend, a helper. The first line should be one of, how can I help? How can I be empathetic? What do you think of this? Is this going to change? And is this problematic to change? Because after all, it's a dangerous profession.
Listen, first of all, I've seen the transformation in policing during my career. When I first started, no one talked about, relationships with community or anything like that. You see somebody doing something wrong, they get arrested. There was nobody talking about collaboration or anything like that. That's why I think community policing is so important. I am really a huge proponent of community policing, because when you engage with people in a non-law enforcement way, it keeps you balanced. When all you do is respond to calls for service, and believe me, it is not easy. It's easy to become jaded over time if you aren't careful, because that's what you're dealing with. If you are in some of these real challenge, high crime areas, you go from robbery to rape to homicides to shootings, and you start to develop this perception that, oh, this is a dangerous neighborhood, therefore all the people in the neighborhood are dangerous. And nothing could be further from the truth. You have people, more decent law-abiding people living in a neighborhood than you have criminals. The problem is they can't always come out. What you deal with more often are the ones that are out there doing things wrong and doing harm. And so you have to really get that balance. And so there's a certain amount of being observant, being careful, and so forth. But the focus and the emphasis in policing today is really about building those relationships. It's about teaching, treating people respectfully. It's about de-escalating situations as opposed to, taking immediate action and simply escalating things along the way. So that's occurring. What we tend to see, because of social media and so forth, you see the very worst of policing that takes place. The video doesn't go viral if it's some officer doing something nice and helpful to an individual. And police have to do a better job of marketing and really getting that kind of story out themselves, because mainstream media is not always going to do it, because they just, they're looking for the soundbite, they're looking for the video that's going to draw, an audience and so forth. And unfortunately, because policing is what it is, and occasionally you use force in order to take someone into custody, and it's not television. Using force is not a pretty thing to look at.
I wonder if you think, Commissioner Outlaw, that the influx of women, not that there have been that many, but that has had an effect on the culture.
That's part of it. If we were talking equity, right? If we were 50% women, I'd be able to say with full confidence, yes, you're absolutely right, because there's more women on the force, we're far more empathetic, culture is changing, so on and so forth. We're not there yet. But because we are focusing our efforts for diversity across the board, again, when I mentioned life experience, previous professions, social workers, teachers, anything, some physical trainers, you name it, any type of previous customer service experience, all of these things add value. All of these skill sets bring soft skills, which is pretty much what you're talking about. I can tell you that before it was, the phrase diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, and inclusion was even a phrase, we were all dealing with something even internally that we didn't know had a name for, right? We're talking about whether it was microaggressions or whatever it is. So we're evolving over time, but I will tell you this, that at least in the last, when you talk about, Commissioner Ramsey and his colleagues, what they bring, it forced everyone to coin a lot of the things of what we're already doing and making it consistent around the country as far as what was considered best practices for 21st century policing, which included heavy emphasis on community policing, but a holistic approach, employee health and well-being, safety and wellness, policy, technology, all these things, so that we were shifting away from a strictly authoritarian type relationship with our community and recognizing that we had to be procedurally just in everything that we do. Are we giving the community voice? Are we being, neutral? Are we creating situations where we're being trusting? And the reality is, I think the other piece is people forget what we have to deal with. But when we have to be warrior, we're warrior. And then we go back to guardian. It's not warrior all the time, but we have to train to be able to do those things, because look at what we have to deal with. We get shot at a regular basis. That's the reality of it. And so while there may be some instances where an officer has gone from call to call to call, and they've done, just dealt with the worst that day, and you might not get a smile, right? It doesn't mean that they're still not going home being someone's parent or uncle, or, taking care of a pet or a loved one. We have far more in common with folks than I think a lot of people give us credit for.
Yeah.
And if I could just add something around the training, because I think, a couple things come up. One, some departments now, and I will use Baltimore as an example because they're doing it now. They're actually, as part of their training in service, not just recruit training, but veteran officers as well as new recruits. They actually have a course where they're teaching the history of policing in Baltimore. And what's important about that is you see the parts of policing that took place, which gave rise to people, the distrust that people have and the attitude that some people have about policing, because especially in communities of color, police were not seen as a positive force within that community. They were seen as being almost an occupying force and being abusive and being disrespectful and those kinds of things. And by understanding the history of policing, and I mean going back in time, to days when, police were used as, to track down runaway slaves and that sort of thing. The people we're hiring today aren't aware of that. They weren't alive when a lot of these things took place. But if you want to empathize with a community, you have to first understand where they're coming from.
Right.
And what their collective experiences has been, which would be totally different from yours. Because you can't start to build those bridges until you really understand the depth of the pain, the depth of the distrust, and those kinds of things to start building the kinds of relationships that you need to be able to build. And more departments now are starting to take a serious look at that, acknowledging those injustices. Not that there aren't some that occur today, because there are, but really kind of putting it in context and understanding, why it is that you go in some communities and people look at you a particular way and they don't trust police, and there's a reason for that. And I think that's important.
That's fascinating. I also want to ask you, Commissioner Ramsey, because you've lived through the sea change of social media. I mean, you started your career where there wasn't the internet, and then you ended it with social media present. I mean, has it really radically changed and made the police much more defensive because of the kinds of things that, a cell phone is able to record?
So, social media has made a tremendous difference in life in general for all of us. And certainly it's had an impact on policing, because of social media, because of 24-hour news coverage, because of the environment we're in now. It doesn't matter where an incident occurs, you're going to feel it in your city. I mean, Danielle and chiefs across the country had to deal with the fallout from the George Floyd murder that occurred. And at Minneapolis, people were protesting everywhere. So social media has changed the landscape to a large extent. I think where police fall short on this, and it's getting better, we don't leverage social media to the extent we should in order to get our message out. Now, some departments are better at it than others, but I think there's still more that could be done there, but it certainly does shape opinion.
I know.
It's had a huge impact.
I want to jump in really quick on that. So you just made a very important point, right? There has to be, because, still sitting in this seat, we push out positive all day, every day. And we know if it doesn't, if it bleeds, it leads. But there also has to be a willingness for folks to come to the table, even if they don't agree with what we're saying, to at least listen so we can start chipping away. And I don't think this last year has been very helpful, but I think we're trending more towards the use of technology. And so if we're shifting away from building relationships in person and meeting people where they are and all those things, it makes it more and more difficult for us when we do create those opportunities for fellowship outside of law enforcement actions. Okay, now we're in the room. Now what? Are you willing to at least listen? How do we engage? How do we facilitate these?
I agree with you.
And I want to make clear, I think we do have a right to be defensive when there's misinformation put out or inaccurate information, or if we do what we were supposed to do, what the law says we can do, what we're trained to do, what policy says, and it might not look the best. And we come out and we defend ourselves by giving facts, not, setting tone and using, very defensive or harsh language, by saying, here's the fact pattern and here's why we do it. I think we have to do more of that, quite frankly. And when we do that and we stand up for ourselves, then it's seen as if, it almost has a very pejorative connotation associated with it. But we have a right to do that.
That's a good point, Commissioner.
Especially given today's climate, we don't get the benefit of the doubt. No one's going to chime in and say, you know what, she's right.
Well, but the other side of that too is we have to be just as aggressive in acknowledging when we make mistakes and when something is wrong.
Yes.
And that gives you the credibility when you do challenge.
That brings me to the police unions. And I wonder what your thoughts are about the police unions, which I'm sure, Danielle, you're dealing with on a regular basis. Is this a PR issue as well, or is there systemic elements here that need to be addressed?
Well, it could be a little bit of both, depending on where you are. I mean, everywhere I've worked amongst very strong unions. I want to be very clear. I'm not anti-union by any means. The very first time I've gone without union representation in my entire career, this began in 2017. So it's a big difference when you have somebody to have your back and speak, speak up for you and your best interests, as opposed to being exempt and not having that. With that said, everyone's speaking for what they believe is in the best interest of whatever their interests are. So for me, I make very clear and say, look, my interests are everyone. It's not just the membership. It's also no one person is better than this entire organization, not even me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking about the membership or all of our employees, whether sworn or professional. I'm thinking about the well-being of the entire department. I'm thinking about the well-being of the community. And when you talk about unions, they're just focused on whoever their specific membership is, right? Now, whether or not that particular union, wherever they are in the country, because, I don't want to throw everybody in the same bucket, because you have some union leadership in parts of the country that get it, right? They're aligned with what the community wants. They understand that, we're all servant leaders, and there has to be alignment. And then you can advocate for the rights of your members. And you can also understand that you're providing a service. So I don't want to make generalizations, but I want to make very clear that everybody's kind of focusing on different things, and depending on whatever that style or historically what the systems within that particular union has been, that might be the outcome that you see depending on where you are. My very first, and it's interesting that Commissioner Ramsey is in this, my very first time experiencing a police chief get along well with a union leader was with Chuck Ramsey.
I was just going to ask you whether there was something in his background that you see as particularly inspiring or a model for you. And I guess that's something.
Commissioner Ramsey was a mentor for many, not just for me. And we've known each other before I even gotten here. I think there's this thought maybe that we just met when I got here, but he's been responsible for mentoring many others like myself for quite some time, and recognizing that now that the door has been opened for myself, it's important for me to continue to reach back and continue to do the same. But in those meetings with our mentors along the way, he showed how you can work with the union leader, right? And get things done. And it just brings me back to what my grandmother and my mother used to say: you get more with honey than you do vinegar. That's how it works.
And he uses honey. You use honey,
Well,
Chuck?
you establish a relationship right off the bat. It's about communication, understanding that they've got a job to do, you have a job to do. You're not going to agree on everything. First, let's find areas that we do agree on and we can work together on, okay? Because that kind of helps bring some balance when we have the areas that really you're on one side, I'm on the other. But, I remember the president of the union in Philly, he and I spoke my first or second day, and we both made a decision. Listen, we'll disagree on stuff, but we will not make it personal. Neither of us will make it personal. And if I'm about to do something that I know is going to hit the media, I'd give him a call and say, hey, heads up, this is coming, out of respect. He would do the same thing for me. I didn't have to like it. He didn't have to like it. But we at least knew it was, he shouldn't have to read it in the newspaper, right? If I could avoid it. And so it was just communication and being able to talk to one another behind closed doors, not in the media.
So to take another piece of this landscape, and this is for Commissioner Outlaw, the current Philadelphia DA is a challenge in some ways to a traditional commissioner, I would think, in that he has really taken a very different view toward prosecution. And I wonder about your relationship with him and your thoughts about that, because there's a sort of triangle, the police force, the police union, and now the DA, the Philadelphia DA. Could you talk a little bit about that configuration?
Sure. So the DA is the chief law enforcement officer for the county, right? We have a professional relationship, but where the challenges come in is that where there's misalignment in what we prioritize. And it's not just here. We should be clear
it's across the country.
It's across the country. We're not far off on a lot of things, right? And it's not just the DA. Whether you're talking about a lot of the police chiefs around the country who believe that more needs to be put into social services and we shouldn't be responding to a lot of the calls that we respond to. Quite frankly, I would love to say on some days, please don't call us for that, but we can't, because there's no alternative method or alternative policing strategy or any type of strategy put in place, right? So a lot of the current DAs around the country think the same thing, but how they go about executing that vision is a lot different compared to how we are implementing or executing based off of what we're dealing with right in front of us right now today. The DAs don't have the luxury of saying, well, they can say what they're going to do on the back end, but they're not responsible for what happens when someone dials 911 and they're dealing with someone when they're at their worst, at the lowest. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to them, and it's the biggest trauma they've ever experienced. So how I prioritize, and when I rolled my plan out last year, when I laid out some of the challenges, because what's required for us to do our work is partnership and alignment across the board, not just with the DA, but with our federal partners, everyone with whom we partner, right? Our state, local, federal partners. And if they don't prioritize in the same way that we are, we can make a mess all day or do whatever it is, and then it falls by the wayside if there's a revolving door or whatever it is. So that's truly what the challenge is. We may agree on a lot of areas, but how we get to yes
and how you get to it,
about getting there, I think is where the true challenges lie.
I want to ask you something, Commissioner Outlaw, which I know some of my audience will want to know, and that is whether your name propelled you into law enforcement in any way.
This is a married name. This isn't the name that I was born with.
You were already a police officer then.
I was already a police officer. And actually, it took me a while to change my name. I didn't want to change my name because I knew what would come along with it. If anyone has time to look me up, they'll learn that I did not want to go into law enforcement. I didn't grow up having a trusting relationship with law enforcement. And I have a pretty unique path of how I got here. But no, it wasn't the name.
I wonder just a few words about how, as a woman and a woman of color, you navigated this very, in some ways, one would think, traditional institution as effectively and as quickly as you did.
So that's what propelled me up the ladder. It's what people told me, or what they, in a very nuanced way, told me what I couldn't do or what I shouldn't be doing because it's not for someone like me. That's what motivated me. The same things that motivated me to get into law enforcement, wanting to make change from inside and going back and contributing to my community, are the same things that said, okay, if this person can be in leadership, I know I can probably do it as well. You know, with lived experience and my very unique perspective, I knew that I can add value. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy. Like I said, this is a very white male dominated profession. It always has been, and it hasn't changed yet. You know, I've endured a lot and, you know, opened many doors because doors were opened for me. And I do that because I know that we are developing the next group of leaders. I'm looking forward to the day when I can sit on my porch in my chair and say, and pick up the phone like Commissioner Ramsey does and say, hey, what you doing about this violence here in the city? I'm looking forward to my day as well. But it hasn't been easy by any means, but it's because, again, I've had strong mentorship and I've had a network of people that I knew I can call and rely upon at any given moment that has gotten me through.
Well, thank you so much. We're actually out of time. This has been such an inspiring conversation, and I want to thank you greatly for joining me, and I want to thank my audience today for being with us at the Civil Discourse.